Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining. Let me ask Komal to start the session. Komal, over to you, please.
Thank you, Abhishek. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's session on inclusive leadership, the road ahead. My name is Komal Mathur, and I'll be moderating this session for today. So, let me start by talking a little about empowering women in project management initiative. On behalf of the Region 11 Project Management Community, a very warm welcome to Jennifer Tharp and Dr. Srini Srinivasan. In the next few minutes, I'm going to talk about this exciting initiative, Empower Women in Project Management. Let me start by taking you behind the scenes of this initiative. Over a decade of volunteering with PMI, I observed people who are committed to professional growth join the PMI community. Majority of them go on to become credential holders. They engage in continuous learning, and a few of them chose to take up volunteering. During our Project Management National Conference in 2019, our organizing committee took a cognizance of the voice of our membership and made subtle changes to the conference format. And guess what? We noticed an increase in the diversity and engagement level. These pictures here are a reflection of women enjoying their careers, engaging with the fellow professionals, and volunteering for our PMI community. Today, where I stand, I see the challenges of women professionals are common across the region. In the last few months, there has been a lot of paddling under the water, and we all agreed that we need a more vibrant project management community. It was decided to take this forward as a regional initiative with the collaboration of all the chapters. I love this picture. All the chapters in one single frame, working together to make a difference in the project management community. With one passionate volunteer leader from each chapter, a 11-member Women Empowerment Committee was formed. Ishwari Rao, a seasoned volunteer with Bangalore chapter. Anisha Ahmed, a socially active volunteer from Bangladesh chapter. Vijay Lakshmi Ramachandran, an enterprising volunteer from Chennai. Anuga Hemanti, a lively volunteer from Sri Lanka. Meenakshi Vaishnav, a passionate volunteer from Gujarat. Akhila Gauri Shankar, a bundle of energy from Kerala. Swati Damble, a meticulous volunteer from Mumbai. Neelima Chakra, a communication specialist from North India. Sangeeta Kanse, a spirited volunteer from Pune Deccan chapter. Sawan Sen, a dynamic volunteer from West Bengal. And myself from the Pearl City Hyderabad chapter. We reached out to several stakeholders, drew upon our experiences, and today I'm happy to announce Empower Women in Project Management Initiative. As part of this initiative, to increase engagement of women in project management, we as a committee take upon ourselves to understand what we can do to help women leverage the chapter events and opportunities, what help and support they need to stay invested in their careers and professions, how we can inspire more women to volunteer for chapter and global opportunities. We will ideate, strategize, and design over the next period of time. This initiative will also provide a platform where the women will feel inspired, women will feel safe and confident to engage and enrich. On behalf of the PMI Region 11 Women Engagement Committee, I appeal to one and all to be part of this initiative and help promote the culture of inclusion and engagement in the chapter boards, volunteers, and membership. Only together we can bring a change to make diversity a priority. With this, I would like to now welcome Dr. Srini Srinivasan, MD, PMI India. Dr. Srinivasan has managed complex multiple geographical projects, multi-BU transformation projects, and has been involved in 5 successful startups in the areas as diverse as biomedical technology, consulting services, outsourcing, and knowledge management. We'd love to hear from you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Komal. Namaste, Swagata, Ayuban, everyone. On behalf of PMI, it is my privilege to welcome all of you to this timely and very significant session. And the topic is something that all of us at PMI are extremely passionate about. I'm thrilled that we have Jennifer Tharp as the keynote speaker because her experience and her eminence really adds value and weight to this topic. Investing in inclusive leadership just makes good sense. It provides tangible benefits, both from better performance financially to better innovation in organizations. For example, companies with more than one woman on their boards generate shareholder returns nearly 4% higher than companies with no women on their boards. Another example, companies with women occupying 30% of leadership positions are 15% more profitable than companies with no women in leadership positions. And if Indian women participated in the workforce to the same extent as women across the world do, India's GDP would be higher by 27% and grow an additional 1.5% every year. So I think the case stands for itself. It just makes good sense from a societal standpoint. It makes good sense from a business standpoint. We just have to do it. So with that, let me welcome all of you once again and thank you for taking the time to spend this evening with us. And I hope you and your families continue to be safe and well. Thank you.
Ishwari?
Thank you, Dr. Srini, for your experiences and your support for this program. My name is Ishwari Rao, and I take over from here as the MC. It is my pleasure to introduce to you speaker for today's session, Ms. Jennifer Tharp, PMI board member. Ms. Tharp advises startups and multinationals, including eBay, Genentech, Cisco, and Nikon on difficult governance problems. She works closely with boards and executive teams to increase oversight, transparency, and accountability, and a recognized expert in project and program management, data privacy, agile development, strategic planning, cybersecurity, and compliance risk. Ms. Tharp co-authored the groundbreaking book, Sustainability Integration for Effective Project Management. She has taught project management, risk leadership, and sustainability at University of California, Berkeley, USA. She is also a regular keynote speaker at international events where she focuses on the value of project management to achieve business priorities. Ms. Tharp has been a project management professional, certification holder, and a PMI volunteer since 2001. Since joining the PMI Board of Directors, she has served as Chair of the Audit and Performance Oversight Committee, Chair of the Compensation Committee, and Vice Chair of the Board, where she has leveraged her governance expertise to help PMI prepare for the future. Prior to serving on the Global Board, she has helped PMI chapters achieve their goals and serve their members through better strategic planning, execution, and served as a president of the PMI San Francisco Bay Area chapter. She is a 2008 PMI Leadership Institute Masterclass graduate. May I now request Komal to please play the video.
Good morning. How is everybody this morning? I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here with all of you from across Region 11, representing India, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh. I'm excited to be a part of this event for the Region 11 Women Engagement Committee, especially after that great introduction. I hope we can have some really positive discussions today. I'd love for you to take liberal use of the chat button while I'm talking. I am very, very happy for people to be talking while I'm talking, and engage with each other on ideas that you feel are important. The conversations that you have with each other today are every bit as important as the information I will be sharing with you. I want to especially thank everyone who helped make this event possible, especially the leadership of Region 11, the Pearl City Hyderabad chapter, Kamal and Dr. Srini, and all who helped organize a discussion on such an important topic, one that can make a significant difference to our future. I also want to thank all of you for continuing to take part in this community and engaging during this very challenging time. One of the best things about PMI is the global network that we've built together, allowing project professionals from around the world to come together and share ideas. I have something terrible to confess to you. I've never been to India. I've never been to Sri Lanka, and I've never been to Bangladesh. These are three places that I've always wanted to go to, and I would very much love to be there in person with you today. And as much as I would love to be there with you, I'm really happy to have this chance to connect with you. So let's start by talking about what's on everybody's mind. COVID-19 should be a wake-up call for all of us in many ways. It reminds us of the need for our leaders and institutions to plan ahead for the unthinkable. It's a reminder of the need for continued breakthroughs in science, medicine, and public policy. And it's a reminder that we depend on one another. Our society and our community is stronger when we all work together. None of us are immune from the world's big challenges, no matter how healthy or wealthy we may be. COVID-19 is the great equalizer and a reminder that we all have an obligation to come together to build a better world. And that's what project professionals do at their very best. You may know that PMI's winning aspiration, our big motivation, is we empower people to make ideas a reality. And that's what you all do every day. PMI was proud to recently host the VP of India at our national conference in Hyderabad, back when we could actually all gather together in the same room. He rightfully described the task of leading and transforming India as a project itself. That project is now bigger than ever. Look at India's recent pledge to invest $266 billion in new stimulus funds as a response to COVID-19, amounting to 10% of India's GDP. These funds include loans to small businesses, credit guarantees, and much more. You can't transform India without a project, and we can't solve this problem without project management. Managing a country like a project. As more of the world becomes organized around projects, our skill sets and knowledge will become more important and in demand, especially as organizations depend on change makers to lead the recovery from this crisis. That's why we describe our world today as the project economy. Everywhere we look, the world is becoming projectized, and projects are driving change. Last year, as part of our 50th anniversary celebration, PMI announced the list of the 50 most influential projects of the past 50 years. Thousands of projects were considered in this effort. We can all think of the biggest projects, the most important, the most famous ones, but the ones that we looked at were the ones that met really high standards. Did they defy expectations? Did they transform an industry and our culture in ways that we continue to feel today? What would life be like without these projects? So, for example, try to imagine a modern world without access to mobile phones. Imagine that we never walked on the surface of the moon. Imagine that we never mobilized to find a cure for polio. Imagine no offshore wind farms, no desalination plants, no Sydney Opera House. And try to imagine a 21st century without the contributions of leaders like Malala Yousafzai, the young woman in Pakistan who was shot in the head for the crime of calling for girls to have the right to attend school and get an education. But through what some would call a sheer miracle, she didn't just recover, she went on to lead a global movement for girls' education, even becoming the youngest Nobel laureate when she went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. She launched the Malala Fund 1 year after her attack, a nonprofit focused on breaking down the barriers that keep 130 million girls out of school around the world. One of the first initiatives the fund launched was the Swat Valley Project, which we recognized on our list of the 50 most influential projects. This effort sent 40 girls from ages 5 to 12 back to school in Pakistan's Swat Valley region. But the impact of that project extended much further, shining a light on how far we still have to go to ensure equal access to education for all of our young girls. As Malala put it, let's put the education of 40 girls into 40 million girls. As I was reflecting on this gathering, I was thinking a lot about the word empowerment. We might ask ourselves, what does this word mean to us? In fact, I'd like you to enter into the chat what you think of when you think of empowering women. What does empowering women mean? It's a fitting question given that PMI's winning aspiration is empowering people to make ideas a reality. So what does empowerment really mean? For women in many places around the world, empowerment is not always something that women choose for themselves. Often, it's a power that they are granted by others. In order for women to really be empowered, that requires not just individual action alone. It also requires that men make room and stand with them. We need allies in our empowerment. We need allies in order to be strong. We know that the work of giving women an equal voice and an equal seat at the table has to begin with who we recognize and who we celebrate. This is a challenge in every industry, including project management, when so many of the faces we see and the stories we hear are about men alone. So when we begin thinking about tangible ways that we can start making a difference, one simple way is to make sure we're fully inclusive in what the profession looks like. That's where I'm asking you to help us continue to make progress, making sure that when we tell our story around the world, we're not only inclusive of different regions, but the diversity within those regions as well. That's why it's so crucial that the Vice President of India didn't only speak about infrastructure and economic development in his transformation plans. He explicitly linked them to social empowerment. And that's why events like this are so important in beginning the dialogue of what we can do to give women and girls the same opportunities to lead and succeed as everyone else. We've seen great examples of chapters leading the way in this work, especially last year during our 50th anniversary. Our challenge as part of that celebration to project leaders across the globe was to unite and use our expertise to tackle some of the world's toughest challenges, from climate change to fighting hunger. We used as our framework the UN 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Hunger, poverty, climate change, these are some of the toughest challenges our world faces. Who better to lend expertise and talents than us, project managers? We solve hard problems for a living. Through this effort, we saw volunteers giving their time to make the world a more equal place for women and girls. The Chennai chapter worked with PMIEF to collaborate with the local chapter, Avatar, on a project providing employment guidance to underprivileged girls. You can consider this project a force for good on 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals. It attacks quality education, it fights poverty, and of course it also works on gender equality. The PMI Bengaluru chapter created a STEM program for underprivileged girls to teach them about opportunities in science and technology. And that's more important today than ever, when we know technology is going to drive the future of work. Even pizza companies today call themselves technology companies because success today is more and more reliant on things like the delivery system for your products and services. Although, let's be real, your pizza still has to taste pretty good. These are just a few of the examples from around the world. Wherever you can find a PMI chapter, people are working together on these goals. So when you think about leadership in this area, who are some of your favorite women leaders? Let's go ahead and add those to the chat and continue the discussion. I see this firsthand all the time in the San Francisco Bay Area where I live, right next to Silicon Valley, a huge tech hub like Hyderabad. We're home to many of the world's most innovative companies, but we still have some old-fashioned ideas. When we celebrate company founders, we tend to see something in common. I see some great speakers presenting on tech issues and making great points, but their presentations all seem to focus on a pretty narrow group of people. It sends a powerful message when the people we celebrate in business and media all kind of look the same. I can't quite put my finger on what they all have in common. Okay, I'm beginning to see a little bit of a trend. I could give you some stats about how underrepresented women are in the C-suite and throw them up on a slide, but how about a story instead? Here's one told by Sheryl Sandberg, a leader of tech and Facebook. Sheryl Sandberg was once at a meeting in New York City pitching a deal when she needed a bathroom break. She asked where the bathroom was, but the man at the investment company was embarrassed to admit that he had no idea where the women's bathroom was. Wait, did you just move into this office? No, came the reply. We've been here for over a year. Wait, so are you telling me that I'm the only woman to have pitched a deal in this office for a year? Sandberg later recalled, and he looked at me and said, yeah, or maybe you're just the only one that had to use the bathroom. She's not alone. One of my best friends in Silicon Valley is a Korean-American woman named Joyce. Joyce is a serial entrepreneur, but despite her track record, she has a hard time getting meetings with investors. She has been directly told this several times. Venture capitalists, we like to follow patterns. If someone comes in and he looks like the guy we just funded, and the idea is similar to the guy we just funded, then we think we have a winner. But you don't look like anybody we funded. Sadly, too many of us can relate to that feeling, a feeling like we're alone and we don't see ourselves reflected in the images of what we want to achieve. It seems sometimes like you have to look far and wide to finally find people who represent different backgrounds in the C-suite. When we know there are incredible stories in the world of business to celebrate, leaders like Indra Nooyi, who went from growing up in Chennai to studying at the University of Madras to leading Pepsi as CEO and consistently ranked as one of the most powerful women in the world. The amazing Uttara Gunawardena, who built a multi-million-dollar business, took her company to an initial public offering of stock, and then gave it all up to lead Sri Lanka's fight for animal rights and to form a foundation focused on environmental and wildlife conservation. What an amazing woman. And all those women entrepreneurs who gained new pathways to financing for their businesses through innovations like the Grameen Bank, which shows us what it is possible when institutions like banks make it their mission to improve society in addition to the bottom line. Or the women who helped make it possible for the Indian Space Research Organization's first moon orbiter to capture rare images of the far side of the moon. Women scientists in key positions have helped drive India's accomplishments, like putting a satellite into orbit around Mars. India now has set its sight on another attempt at becoming the 4th country to successfully complete a lunar landing. How cool is that? Woohoo! pmiindia highlighted one of these pioneering women last year in a publication for International Women's Day, along with a range of PMI members and project leaders leading major initiatives across India. Anuranda TK is the first woman to serve as director of the Satellite Communication Program for ISRO. She stands out as a role model for girls everywhere. She spoke to pmiindia about the challenges she faces joining an organization where few people looked like her. But she emphasizes it's not enough for women to just work harder than their peers. A few superstars, even those who lead some of India's most important government agencies and companies, can't take the place of making structural and societal changes that allow many more the opportunity to make full use of their gifts. And that requires that our organizations make it a priority to recruit and retain women from all walks of life, not just because it's the right thing to do, but because it's the smart and strategic thing to do. This type of impact on diversity in organizations is something we need to emphasize more. My suspicion is in many places, diversity is seen as a nice to have. But in truth, you're putting your organization at risk if you don't have people in the room offering a wide variety of perspectives. This is a question that PMI will be exploring in our research in terms of the impact on project professionals in particular. As you may know, we produce in-depth research and insight reporting all year long, focused on the trends and issues that have the greatest potential to impact professionals, from automation to artificial intelligence to machine learning. But I'm very excited about our next report coming out in June, which will look at our Pulse of the Profession survey in results in terms of the impact on diversity and on innovation. Look for that research next month. It's not finalized yet, but we can see the work done elsewhere and conclude that diversity has a clear ROI and results in especially in attracting top talent. Our Pulse research found that many organizations lacked programs that would benefit women specifically and help them develop professionally. Some organizations offer things like women's networking groups, community-based events for school-age girls' skills development, and formal mentorship programs for female project leaders. All of those are good, but over half of organizations don't offer any programs like this at all. Why not look at what you can get involved in starting at your organization or build on work that may already be underway and see what you can do to help it grow? We asked female project professionals in our Pulse research what some of their most common obstacles are. I love this data that I'm showing here on this chart. If you look closely, it reveals something that is very telling. Your eye might be drawn to some of the choices. Oh, cultural bias, lack of role models, I can see that, lack of executive support. But I think the most interesting thing about this slide is at the very bottom, where 41% of men believe that women face no obstacles at all, no significant obstacles, compared to only 23% of women. It's clear that for a significant portion of men we spoke to, they simply don't see the obstacles preventing women from advancing. And it kind of makes sense. If there isn't a rock in my path, how am I going to see the rock that's in your path? And change will be very hard to drive if we don't get more men to understand the role that they can play, let alone even recognizing that those obstacles might be there. These issues need to be addressed because a mountain of evidence illustrates that organizations that include women in the ranks of the leadership outperform less diverse organizations. I would highlight here some recent examples of that evidence that we've seen in North America. Dr. Srini said at the very beginning that he talked about the importance of having 2 or more women on boards. My state in the United States, California, recently passed a law requiring all publicly traded companies based in California to name at least one female board director. Some argue we shouldn't need to put a quota in place to ensure equality. We should just put the best person possible. That sometimes it seems that, you know, we need policy and structural changes to actually ensure full representation. There are clear trend lines emerging in which leading companies are spending much more time thinking about their impact on society, including what they're doing to ensure greater equality. I admit, when I read the quote from Deloitte here on the purple on the right, I think it's easy to become a little bit skeptical. Don't CEOs basically care about maximizing shareholder value above everything else, despite whatever they might say about society in a survey? But I really do think that we're seeing a shift, especially as millennials and younger professionals assume more roles of authority. And that shift in mentality, that shift in leadership, begins by broadening the pool of who looks like a leader. During the COVID-19 crisis, some of the highest marks have been paid to women leaders who have acted decisively and have taken what can sometimes be unpopular actions when the science and public health expertise told them they needed to act. On this list, I'm especially drawn to our leader from New Zealand. You know, she's only 39 years old. She's one of those millennials that's going to be changing things. If she can make changes at 39, think of the changes that we can be making. And one of the superstars of this crisis has been Sheikh Hasina, Bangladesh's longest-serving prime minister. She acted quickly, evacuating Bangladeshi citizens from China in early February. After the first case was diagnosed in early March, she closed educational institutions and nudged all non-essential businesses to go online. Then she harnessed technology, installing screening devices across international airports that screened some 650,000 people, of which 37,000 were immediately quarantined, something most of the rest of the world still isn't doing. What great leadership.
Yeah, ma'am, I have a question from the audience.
Sure.
And the question is, in this crisis of COVID, already many have lost jobs, men and women both, and I'm afraid henceforth, preference may be given to men for open opportunities in future. How women shall differently do to put forth their candidature and make progress?
That is a challenge. It's always difficult going against bias. The traditional way that women have succeeded is by being better than every single man that's available. But obviously that's not an ideal situation. It's very difficult right now. I don't know the statistics for where you are, but I did see this morning that the statistics in the United States is 1 out of every 4 people in the United States has now filed for unemployment. A quarter of us are out of work. So it is affecting a lot of us, and it is a concern for the future. It's important to talk about the capabilities that you have, if you have a chance to be in an interview, to talk about, you know, the leadership that you've shown, to speak boldly about the accomplishments that you've made, the things that you're capable of doing, and speak strongly of your ability to lead. You know, we can't, unfortunately, get into the minds of everyone around us and help them see things differently. But we can speak up very strongly for ourselves and our capabilities, and try to represent ourselves in the best possible way. I hope that helps.
Thank you. We have another question from Jacob said.
Sure.
Do you believe in reservations for women, like, for example, 33% in Parliament?
Okay, so now you're getting into personal feelings. So at this point, I have to make it very clear I am representing myself and my own personal feelings. Let me share a little bit of my experience. When we talk about, one of the things that's been important to me in my professional life is I pay a lot of attention, as a person who's serving on a board of directors, I pay a lot of attention to the number of women that are serving on boards of directors. PMI has been very fortunate in that we have a pretty balanced board between men and women, and with geographic diversity as well, which allows us to have fuller conversations in the boardroom. So I see a lot of the value of having what we call cognitive diversity, different perspectives from everywhere. And so this is something that I care a lot about. But when I look at the statistics for the United States, which is what I know well, only I think it's about 13% of boards have a woman on the board of directors, which is very, very low, and it's usually just one. But when I look at Silicon Valley and you think, oh, Silicon Valley, there's a lot of very educated people there. They're very progressive. They're going to be smarter about this. Well, the numbers tend to be more like 9% of companies have a woman on the board of directors. And it's not because there's no capable women. So I think that one thing that a lot of organizations have seen is that sometimes echo. Sorry about that. Okay, somebody needs to go on mute because I'm echoing a little bit. But anyway, is that having a quota like 33% in Parliament is helpful in terms of just getting the representation there to begin with, so that men can see, oh, a woman is just as valuable as a man is, and oh, they bring different perspectives. So I think it is good as a stepping stone. I've seen statistics that say for like women on boards, for example, if we just let it happen organically and we don't have rules and quotas here and there, that will achieve gender parity at about the year 2100. And, that seems like a long way to wait. So personally, I don't have a problem with quotas. I understand that there can be a little bit of a blowback. There will be some people that will react and say, well, you're only here because there's a rule that says you should be here, so I shouldn't have to listen to you because you're not as important as me. These are barriers that we face. But so that's my personal feeling, is I think that they're useful. They can be dangerous, but I think it's hard to achieve parity without them. So that again is my personal view. All right.
Thank you, madam.
Okay. Oh, one more?
Thoughts at the leadership level to promote women. I hardly see any work being done for their junior and mid-management to create an environment which will enable their growth.
Okay, for the answer for that one, let me go ahead and continue on with the presentation because I'm going to touch on some of those aspects. So let me go further in the presentation, and then we can see if that's addressed or if we want to talk about it further. Is that good?
Thanks.
Okay. So, I do want to say that I am going to talk a little bit more about why it's important to have women in leadership. And it's worth noting that when I say good things about women in leadership, women in project management, women being part, it doesn't mean that I don't think that men are without value. I think men and women are very, very important. But since men are starting out from a position of strength, I think it's important that we reinforce to women the value that they bring and what's special about them, so that to help inspire them to become a bigger part of our community, because I think it's very important. I will be talking a little bit more about inclusion as a whole. Inclusion not just being, you know, let's just have some more women, but let's make sure that we include everybody. So, so why else is it important to have women in leadership? In a lot of ways, women can be better business people in some ways. Women have been found to be better negotiators than men, more willing to collaborate and build alliances to create strong solutions. Women are also excellent mentors. Everyone needs a mentor, someone to help them progress in their careers and aspirations. But men are more likely to mentor men. We need women in leadership to bring our sisters along. Companies cannot afford to ignore 50% of the potential workforce and expect to be competitive in the global economy. Women bring skills, different perspectives, and structural and cultural differences to drive effective solutions. This is a good way to get diversity of thought. If everyone around the table has the same idea, that's not as valuable as someone with a fresh perspective. And if the people leading your organization look, think, and act in a similar way, then this can be lethal for your business moving forward. At best, groupthink limits innovation, devalues independent thought, and creates a culture of little accountability. At worst, it creates a sea of sameness that not even your customer base can relate to anymore. After all, your customers don't all look, think, and act the same. Why should your workforce? Women bring to leadership a more complete range of all the qualities modern leaders need, including self-awareness, emotional attunement, humility, and authenticity. And according to the data, highly inclusive companies were more successful before, during, and after the Great Recession, gaining a 4 times higher stock return than less inclusive organizations. Well, this is pretty interesting and pretty relevant right now. So how does inclusivity deliver such incredible financial results? If we break it down, the case becomes quite clear. When I feel like I belong in an organization, when I'm supported, I will be more engaged and motivated to perform. Organizations with inclusive cultures are 3 times higher performing, 6 times more innovative, and 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes, says Deloitte. And inclusion improves retention rates too. In fact, employees who feel like they can bring their whole selves to work are 42% less likely to look for a new job in the next year. These numbers can certainly help to explain how inclusion benefits the organization directly. But by making the workplace more welcoming and enjoyable for all staff, the business reaps rewards as well. With inclusivity positively proportional to well-being and happy employees creating happy customers, it's safe to say that boosting inclusivity carries benefits across the board for the bottom line and for stakeholders. So here's how our companies can help. Yes.
We have a couple of questions. Kishore asked, I believe the transformation of women getting into many areas of careers that otherwise were unconventionally male-dominated is happening. What is your take on this?
I definitely think that's true. I mean, when I look at my own life, when I was growing up, my mother had grown up in a different generation, and the only options that were available to her was she could be a teacher or she could be a nurse. Now, there were some women who would, you know, get a job in construction or get a job in doing something else, but that was definitely frowned upon. That was not something that a nice lady would do. fortunately for myself, options opened up significantly. I was able to go to college and study many, many different things. And we are seeing more and more women that are involved in male-dominated experiences, male-dominated organizations, and that's really interesting, and it's really positive. But it is difficult anytime a woman, like the woman from the space organization, you know, she was in a very male-dominated organization, and sometimes you feel kind of alone. Sometimes you have a hard time feeling supported. It's kind of like this graphic. I love this graphic so much, because the one that's on the screen, because it shows women helping other women, which I think is one of the keys for moving forward in an organization. When, you know, I started my career in a consumer electronics organization, and there was only one woman in all of the leadership team. And it's kind of hard for thousands of women to all look up to this one woman as our only role model. So fortunately, in many industries, you're seeing more women getting into leadership. But it is a tough path, but it's an important one to make room for our daughters and to help them have more options available to them. So here's yeah? Okay.
There's one more question. You would like to take it now?
Sure.
Men take faster decision mostly based on the judgment, whereas women take a 360-degree view. So it takes a bit of a time for decision making. Is this being perfectionist bad?
Let me repeat the question, because I was a little unclear. I think some of it dropped off. I think you were saying that men make decisions more quickly, where women can take the time to do more analysis work. And is this good or bad? Is that what I heard? Okay.
Yes.
You know, again, it's worth noting that every person is different. I have a boss where I work right now who is a woman, and she is incredibly impulsive, and she is incredibly quick and very decisive. So, I mean, everybody's a little bit different. Everybody has their own different perspectives. Myself, I'm definitely somebody that likes to step back and get more information and make sure that I'm making the right step and do more analysis. The reality is we need both types of people within an organization. You know, many times, you know, my boss, who I was talking about, who would make decisions very quickly, it was always a good idea for me to pull her aside and say, hey, I think this is a great idea, but let's walk through this. Let's consider these different aspects, and let's see if there's some tweaks we can make along the way. So the reality is we make better decisions when we include these different perspectives and these different ways of thinking. We never want to reach the point of analysis paralysis where we're taking in so much information that we can't make a decision, but I think that we need to balance those different perspectives, and that's that's one of the biggest benefits of having a very inclusive culture where all these different voices are heard. Okay, so here's how our companies can help. We can acknowledge the leadership strengths and contributions of women. We can provide women the educational and training resources needed for them to succeed. And we can give women opportunities to excel within their organization and their careers. This could be a lot of different things. It could mean having a flexible hour approach for working moms, dads, and people who care for elderly relatives, or having adaptable human resource policies with remote working options. Well, everybody's got remote working options now, or access-enabled offices. Because face it, women can make strides in the workplace, but having men pull their weight in childcare and housekeeping, That's a much bigger order. And that's something that has to be in place for women to have the bandwidth to be able to contribute as full members within their organizations. Please also add into the chat any other ideas you have that would help companies create a more inclusive environment for women. Including all people is important. Your company can host town hall style meetings where anyone from any level in the organization can share their thoughts and concerns. Inclusion can also be as simple as investing in team social events in which everyone participates. For inclusivity to become part of the very fabric of an organization, the entire organization needs to be shaped with diversity and inclusion in mind. So how can we get more women in our organizations? I thought this image was really fascinating, the one that's on the screen right now. What you see is an excerpt from a paper that I found by researchers from Duke and Waterloo Universities. And the title of this paper is Evidence that Gendered Wording in Job Advertisements Exists and Sustains Gender Inequality. Wow. So you see her on the screen, a job description for an engineer. On the right is what we ordinarily see, a job description with masculine language. The words that are highlighted are words that are determined to be masculine in nature. To the left is the same job description using feminine language. This seems like a subtle difference, but it's important. People won't apply for jobs if they can't see themselves in the role. I may not be as excited to be working for a dominant company, but I may be pretty excited to be part of a community of engineers. There is free software online that you can use to test the bias of your language. If you want to attract more women, consider using more feminine language, or at least using gender-neutral language that appeals to both parties. I find this stuff really, really cool. We're learning so much all the time. So that helps getting folks in the door. This is the question that came up earlier. Now, how do we keep them? This is where a lot of Silicon Valley companies have had some trouble. You'd be surprised by the prejudice experienced even here in the Valley, even in the biggest and most respected companies. I have a friend named Janet who's an engineer at Google. She went into the tech center to get her computer replaced for a new one. Nothing wrong with it, just needed a refresh. The person helping her at the tech center said, "I'm sorry, we replace computers for engineers every 2 years, but for everyone else, you have to wait another year. So you'll have to come back next year." They just assumed she wasn't an engineer because she didn't look like an engineer. She's a girl. Of course not. She must work in marketing or something. Too often, leaders focus diversity and inclusion efforts disproportionately on the employee pipeline, but the employee experience continues far beyond an offer letter. To retain and nurture top talent, it's critical to take an honest look at the end-to-end employee experience with an eye towards creating conditions that promote inclusion on a daily basis and designing ways to measure the impact. We need to establish a sense of belonging for everyone. Organizations must adapt their processes to scale diverse and inclusive behaviors. For example, in meetings, who's invited? Who gets to speak and how often? Are you leaving out anyone whose input would be valuable? Have I created conditions where every person can contribute in their unique, meaningful way and feel safe and secure doing that? If you find places where that's not the case, have the courage to admit that and work to change it. Culture changes in small ways. A company culture lives in the hearts of every person in the company. If we have everyone in the company write down their own personal commitment to diversity and proudly display it, then it becomes a part of who we are, we can celebrate those successes together. Belonging, like security, becomes everybody's job. We need the power of women to help address some of the big, urgent challenges and trends PMI highlights in our signpost research every year. Those of you who work in software development are familiar with the concept of technical debt. Things that we haven't gotten around to fixing that are becoming bigger and bigger problems the longer we ignore them. I've been thinking about a lot of the technical debt our society has. That includes lots of issues that we've put off rather than face. Challenges like unemployment, inequality, defining problems like fighting climate change and building a more sustainable world. The scale of the challenge can be overwhelming. 2019 was the second hottest year on record after 2016, and the past 5 have been the hottest on record in human existence. We're quickly entering a period of consequences. That technical debt is coming due. With alarming frequency, we see extreme weather events like historic floods, droughts, and forest fires around the globe. We want to enter into a new age, but these issues are preventing us from moving forward. We can't overcome this pandemic, and we can't achieve greater things than the Earth has thought possible if half our population can't participate fully with their ideas. Incremental improvement is not enough. We need to transform our economy, our ways of doing business. How do we think more creatively to solve these real problems? What assumptions do we need to set aside for the common good? That need for change is why I love being part of PMI. It's a uniquely for-purpose organization. Not many organizations have the power of volunteers all over the world, like you, giving up their time and energy to give back. And we have the chance to celebrate human creativity and imagination on projects around the world, projects that give us hope that we can, in fact, build a better world for all. But bringing great ideas to life and overcoming huge challenges require that we tap into the talents of everyone. And we can drive that change by having tough conversations and recognizing that we're all in this together. We need men to be allies too, not just at work, but stepping up at home rather than leaving some duties to be women's work and preventing them from pursuing their talents. These can be difficult conversations to have, but as the saying goes, talent is university, and opportunity is not. We've got to make sure we have opportunity for everyone. And you know that you're not alone. PMI has shared so many stories of the challenges faced by women PMs and how they overcame them. They had a lot to say in terms of advice about how to advance and forge their personal journey. Much of their advice spoke directly to the challenging of a balancing home and personal lives for those with families. We face the same challenges in every part of the world, but it's comforting that we're all in it together. These attributes that women mentioned will be increasingly important to work of the future. We often used to call some of these capabilities, the capabilities you see on the screen, as soft skills, stuff like leadership and communicating effectively. But PMI recently collaborated with Stanford professor Behnam Tabrizi, an expert on organizational transformation. Professor Tabrizi hit the nail on the head at a recent PMI event when he argued that these aren't soft skills. These are power skills, because these are what will give people power in the future. Ask yourselves, which of these are well represented on your project teams today, and which need to be developed further? What are the skills either that you see on the screen now, or skills that you can be thinking of that you think are important for the future? So go ahead and enter those in the chat as well, the skills of the future that you think are going to be more and more important that we need to make sure that we bring to the table. Creativity, leadership, the ability to persuade, and many others. These are skill sets where we still have the advantage over machines. So you are project professionals. You may be saying, if I'm not a CEO, what can I do? I can't single-handedly change the culture of my organization. Well, there are some steps you can take to get started. Don't just expect diversity to happen. Make a plan to get it done. And we know how to make plans, including programs, creating pipelines for new talent. Build networks and circles that support one another. Partner with your sisters. Let's build communities and hold each other accountable to make these things happen. For men and allies in particular, learn about and watch out for your own unconscious bias. I read a lot about unconscious bias. I think that it's important for all of us to recognize that we all have biases. We all like to think that we're above having biases, but we all have some amount of prejudice that comes to us just from being members of society. And it helps to try to learn and become aware of those and to try to address those as directly as we can. We often have an idea in our head of what a leader is, and we may need to broaden it to get the best contributions from everyone. The world faces big challenges, now more than ever. But I know that project professionals, women and men alike, can lead us to a better day. How do we harness wind and solar power at greater scale to reduce carbon emissions? How do we build greater understanding across cultures and geographic divisions? If the past 50 years has taught us anything, it's that anything is possible when we connect a vision for the future with an understanding of how to turn that vision into reality. But we need the talents and ideas of everyone, men and women alike. The world is changing, but we're not just reacting to change. We are driving that change. We're shaping that future together. So thank you so much for your time and attention today, and I'm happy to take a bunch more questions. I want to make sure that we have some good conversations and address a lot of the things that you have. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out and open this up to whatever questions you may have.
Thank you, ma'am, for the many ideas and ways that one can learn and how organizations via transformation, creativity, partnership, accountability, and sustainability can bring change and build a better society, like you mentioned. And I think what about COVID-19 is kind of a testament to the kind of challenges that one can go through and how one can only become better in managing different ways of life.
Yeah, that's great.
We have a question from Manan Patel. We need to engage more women in PMI fraternity by subsidizing PMI certification fees in developing countries to get a PMP and give them differentiation status, qualification, and inclusiveness in industry leadership positions.
Well, you know, PMI has been looking at a lot of changes that can be made in terms of pricing parity for countries that are, you know, more wealthy versus countries that are less wealthy to ensure that there's more pricing parity. This is something that's been important to us, and it's going to continue to be important to us as we grow geographic diversity around the world. We want to make sure that we're fair to everyone. I don't know that having different pricing for women versus men I think that might be a direction that we don't go in, at least not in the immediate term. We have to make sure that whatever opportunities we create can't be seen as a disadvantage for someone else. We want to make sure that we have equity, that we have that we offer a lot of opportunities for people. I know some chapters have worked on trying to ensure inclusiveness in different ways by having, student level memberships, youth. PMI is also very interested in expanding social impact and expanding involvement with youth. But I don't know that we're looking at pricing differentiation for women and men. I think if I haven't seen any data that strongly suggests that that's necessary, where it is a little bit clearer on pricing parity, where people make less money in different parts of the world. So that's something that we're directly addressing. But always happy to look at any data that somebody might have to support anything like that, so that we can make sure we consider it. But that's not on the table right now.
Thank you. The other question is, what are the ways in which one can enhance networking in women's group?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and this is always the frustrating thing, is when you look around and you see, well, I don't see any groups for people like me. I want a group at my company. Why doesn't somebody start one? The usual answer is like, well, you could start one if there isn't one available. But many times there are groups available in communities, and especially now in virtual communities, where you can find groups to get involved with. I mean, a perfect example is this group on women empowerment that is just now starting up. It could be a source of support, a place you can go to ask questions. Networking is particularly important. I remember exactly how I felt when I was in my 20s, and I had worked really, really hard, and I knew I was the best performer on my team, and a promotion came up, and I was confident that I was going to get it, and the promotion went to Bob, and I went to my boss and I said, why did you give this to Bob? You know I do better work than he does. You know I work longer hours. You know that you can count on me. And he said, yes, but Bob has a family. It's like, what? So I remember that feeling. I remember how frustrated I was. And I didn't have anybody that I could go to talk about that with. I mean, I could talk to my friends and whine to them and complain, but it's good to have people that are a support organization, whether it's within your company. Sometimes it's even better to have it outside of your company, where people can say, well, this is what I tried, and here, why don't you use this idea to address? So it is very important to find networking. Definitely, Google is your friend for finding virtual groups. Or if you want something within your own organization, definitely, get it started. But make sure that you talk to your human resources group. Say, hey, this is something that I'm thinking about. Make sure that they think it's okay, so they're not really surprised and wondering and everything else. So, yeah, definitely, those things can really help give you a lot of strength.
Thank you. Another question is from Madhavi. What is the psychology of prejudice or bias towards women leadership? Do people resist women leadership?
Well, it depends. I think that and that's kind of why I talked a little bit about implicit, kind of the unconscious bias. Unconscious bias, I think, is the toughest thing. It's the most difficult to see, because it's not, when we think of bias, we think it's like, well, I think a woman's place is cooking my dinner at home. And frankly, you don't hear a lot of people saying that. But what you see instead with a lot of unconscious bias is more like, oh, I really like Srini. He reminds me so much of myself when I was growing up. I can see a lot of myself in him. I think that he's going to be a great leader. I want to go ahead and promote him. I think that he's going to be really strong. And we don't recognize that bias is that familiarity. It's kind of like what my friend Joyce experienced with the VC. It's like, oh, I know, I'm comfortable with this. This person is like me. It's much harder to develop comfort with someone who may be a strong leader, but it's like, oh, I don't know. She's a little bossy. She's a little, and to be able to take the chance and say, well, okay, maybe she's not a lot like me, but let's go ahead and work with her and develop her and make sure that she can be a strong leader. And that's kind of what I mean by unconscious bias. It's not necessarily up there up front saying I don't want to work for a woman boss, but it's more like, ugh, this is just a little uncomfortable. I'm not used to this. I'm not comfortable. So, and those are things that we all need to read about and try to address.
Thank you. I think the other question is, what sort of risk should one focus on in situations like the COVID-19?
Can you build out that question a little bit more? I'm trying to see what they're looking for.
You mentioned that during the transformation and the change process, there are organizations that kind of come through and face a lot of risks. What sort of risks should one focus now in terms of transformation given the current COVID situation?
Well, that is a very big question and not limited to gender. So that's, in terms of COVID-19, it's, every community has different risk level. There's some communities that are still, where I live, we are all still working from home. Unless you work in a hospital or a couple important businesses, everyone is at home. The risks that I face every day, are going to the grocery store or getting personal needs met, and making decisions every day on what to do. It's funny because one of the things that I'm already seeing a little bit of is where I work for a municipal government, and I'm seeing a little bit of what I might call masculine thinking, where there's a few people that are saying, oh, I think we should come to the office and we need to all be working in the office, even though the health department says that we shouldn't be. If you're not willing to put your life on the line for your job, then what are you doing? And it's like, we don't need to think like that. We need to be taking care of each other while we're getting our work done. So, there's a lot of risks that we need to face. But, again, addressing those well does involve making sure that all voices are being heard, that not just a few voices are deciding what risks we take and what actions we take and how we operate as an organization and what we're going to do about, hiring or letting folks go, but making sure that we're taking into account all voices. And that's a key part of inclusion, and that's a key part of what makes inclusion such a powerful force, is we can make much better decisions when we include everyone.
Thank you, ma'am, for kind of talking at length and going over all the different ways in which now one can adopt leadership and kind of do so many different things. And I think in the interest of time, we will have one last question, and that is about what are your thoughts on the ways of transformation our education system to enable next-gen women to become great leaders?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I think that one of the key things is, I talked a little bit in the talk about, I showed all the pictures of all these men that we laud as leaders, but that there's so many examples of women. And it is very important that we look at those diverse examples of women leadership as well as men in all fields. And it doesn't matter whether you're looking in politics, whether you're looking at science, whether you're looking at mathematics, whatever field, there's great leadership on all sides. It's important that women and girls see themselves reflected and recognize that they're capable of doing great things. And it's especially important because, we all come from different families. We all come from different backgrounds. I was one of the people that I was told by my father growing up that when I grew up, I needed to go to college. But the reason I go to college is so that I can meet a nice man and get married and stay home and never work. But I wasn't going to meet a nice man unless I went to college. So it was important that I get an education so that I could never work. Women come into schools with all different kinds of education, all different kinds of perspectives. I think it's important that when they're in schools that they get to see all these different role models and get to see, oh, wow, there are a bunch of different things that I can do. Even though maybe I've been taught that I can only do a few limited things, the whole world is open to me. I can travel, I can learn, I can study, I can contribute to the development of society. I can find an issue that I care very much about, and I can devote my life to that. I think those things are very, very important. Ultimately, making structural changes in how our schools are structured is kind of a bigger question. But at the very least, we can make sure that these voices are heard and that people see the diversity. One of the statistics I was thinking about this morning that I always find so fascinating, and it's worth thinking about when we think about our own biases, is if in any group, if you have the number is 25 to 35%. If 25 to 35% of a group are women, the majority of the group, both women and men, think the group is mostly women. We are so used to seeing, majority men that if we even see a quarter to a third of the group as having women, we all think that it's mostly women in the group. And those are important things to keep in mind, that if we only talk about 25% of our leaders being women, that still is a huge step forward in what we're doing. So definitely, let's be cognizant of those biases and let's build those leadership concepts into our schooling and our exposure for women and girls so that they can grow up to be anything that they want to be. And we need them to change the world. we need all the help we can get.
Thank you very much. This question is for Dr. Srini. What is PMI India doing to improve diversity in organizations in India, sir?
Isri, could you repeat that question, please? Wasn't clear.
Sure. What is PMI India doing to improve diversity in organizations in India?
I think the philosophy of PMI for a long time has been to create engagement and outreach with organizations that we work with and try to pass the message along in very direct ways with the communities that we work with. And I think one of the best ways in which we can demonstrate that is what Jennifer has spoken so eloquently about, and that is we need to mirror what we want others to become. And so I'm proud to say that when I look at Region 11, I look at PMI, I look at who we are and how we do business. In many ways, we are very, very diverse. Jennifer's talked about that, both gender as well as geography. And I think that goes a long way to add weight to the outreach and the discussions that we have with the communities we work with.
Thank you very much, sir. I know there are a lot of questions flowing in the interest of time. We apologize, and we will take them offline. Participants can reach out to Ms. Tharp directly for any questions or advice. Her contacts are displayed on the screen, and it is jennifer.tharp@bod.pmi.org. I would repeat that, jennifer.tharp@bod.pmi.org. And also via LinkedIn, the LinkedIn link is available on your screens. For all PMI members who are not yet a chapter member, we would urge you to please sign up for membership to the chapter nearest to where you reside. The PDUs for this session would need to be manually claimed on the VRMS portal, and the details of the PDUs is available on your screen. I would kind of pause here to allow participants to make note of the slide. A recorded version of this webinar will be available to all participants. And I would like to thank all of you who've taken your time off on a Thursday, a weekday, and amidst so much of things to do while we are at home. I would appreciate all your time and effort on behalf of R11 Women Engagement Committee, on behalf of everyone at the PMI board and the regional chapters. I would now like to invite Ms. Akhila Gaurishankar to convey the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Ishwari. That was a brilliant start to a novel initiative in R11, the Women Engagement Committee. I am Akhila Gaurishankar, a board member of the PMI Kerala chapter. On behalf of the PMI R11 Women Engagement Committee, I propose a vote of thanks. We feel privileged as our PMI board member, Jennifer Tharp, could do the honors with her exemplary webinar, Motivating Us for Inclusive Leadership. Our sincere thanks to you, Jennifer, for agreeing to be the mentor for us and giving us the needed impetus with your excellent presentation. Dr. Srini Srinivasan, Managing Director of PMI India, we thank you for your motivational words and encouraging support for improving diversity in our chapters. We say, well begun is half done. The active participation from members across all the 11 chapters in R11 is reassuring for this initiative. We thank each of our participants and request continued support in our future events also. Within a short span of about 3 weeks, we could reach out to all our chapter members and promote our WEC initiative with a strong and dedicated support from all the leaders and presidents across R11 chapters. We express our sincere gratitude and look forward to your continued patronage. Yes, We owe a great thanks to our R11 social media team led by Syed for introducing us to the world. We rely on your backing for our future events too, for engaging to empower. We received the timely support from PMI India office for the greater reach and for the creative form ideascape. Our thanks to their team, with special thanks to Priya, Suvarna, Jacob, and Roger of PMI India. We were fortunate today to have received support directly from PMI board for this initiative. Our sincere thanks to Tony Appleby, Chair, PMI Board of Directors, Tejas Sura, PMI Board Member, and Ramam Atmakuri, PMI EF Board Member. We were overwhelmed that Diane Landers, ex-chair of PMI, could also join us in this webinar. We acknowledge with thanks all their support, which has made a huge difference. Their continued support can only make this initiative sustainable. Last but not the least, we owe our thanks to the ever-supportive R11 region mentor Girish Kadam for his encouragement and vision to start this WZ initiative. We are grateful to Abhishek Sharma and Zinging from R11 team for their support to make this successful. My vote of thanks won't be complete if I miss out thanking the vibrant and enthusiastic WZ members chaired by Komal Mathur. We also thank our fellow colleague Naureen Laila, who also provided her support. Once again, my sincere thanks to all who helped us make this small beginning of our PMI R11 WZ initiative with this webinar. We look forward to your continued patronage. Wishing everyone a great and safe time. A big thank you.
Thank you, everyone, once again for taking time. I would also like to kind of convey to all of you before we sign off that R11 is the PMI South Asia region chapter that covers Bangladesh, India, and Sri Lanka. You can get more information on R11 and all the initiatives of this committee from the PMI India website. Once again, thank you, everyone. You have a very good evening, and thank you for participating in the session. Good day.